Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, the Shavuot daf Hey. We're going to begin on Hey Amud Aleph, about 8 lines from the top of the word Gufa, getting back to what we said before. So, in our Mishnah talked about a person who has a state of forgetfulness, and the Mishnah says, "As sheyesh bo yediyah betchila," the person had a sense of knowledge in the onset. And also, which Rashi over there says, Shiyayda Shenitma. So, which means he knew that he was Tameh. And also, he has Yediyah B'Sov. And Rashi says, Misha'achlas a Kaidish. When you were eating the Kaidish, the Behelim, O Nichnas Mikdash, you entered the base of Mikdash, V'yatz, and you went out, the Noidalo Shebatuma Achal, O Batuma Nichnas. And now you know that when you ate it, you were tameh, or you entered as you were tameh. So that's what it means. There's yediyah b'tchila, in other words, you knew that you were tameh, and also there's yediyah b'sov. Afterwards, you recognized that you were tameh. However, there was helam b'netayim. There was this moment of forgetfulness, and Rashi says kishachas akaidish. At the time when you're actually eating, that's when it became forgotten that you were tummy. So in this case, there's a din oil of a yored. You have to, depending if you're wealthy, will bring a carbon oila. An ani will bring something of a lower stature, carbon. But that's specifically what it's referring to. In order to be high of a carbon oil of a yored, when it comes to the din of tuma, it's only when you have yediyah b'tchila uva soif. However, the Mishnah said, in the event, let's say you don't have yediyah at the end, so even though you had yediyah at the beginning, so then there's a different carbon called a sir hanas bifnim. Alternatively, let's say you don't have yediyah at the beginning, there's you didn't know your tummy originally, but at the end you realize, so there's a sir hanas b'chutz. So either you have the sir hanas bifnim, which is again in the situation where you have yediyah in the beginning, or you had yediyah only at the end, which is b'chutz, and that, so sir nas b'chutz. But when you have yediyah mitchil v'ad sof and element time, that's when there is a din carbon oil v'yored. Okay, so hopefully we got all that down. So now let's understand the Gemara. Kufa manayin sheinu chayav ella al sheish b'yediyah b'tchila v'yediyah b'sof and element time. How do we know that that's the case? That the only time there's a chiyav oil of yored is only when it comes to having yediyah b'tchila and b'soif. Otherwise, you have to have either the sir hanas b'chutz or the sir hanas b'fnim. Tom lomer v'nelam shnei pamim. Because it says v'nelam 2 times, so therefore, Rabbi Kiva learned out that you are your chayav only have yediyah b'tchila v'atsof. So this is quoting on the bottom of Daled Amud Aleph. It says v'yediyah b'soif that there needs to be yediyah at the end, or there would be no need for a carbon oil of a yored. You wouldn't have an oil of a yored if there wasn't yediyah at the end. So he says, because it says v'nelam shtei pamim, and on this Rashi on Daled Amud Aleph says trei v'nelam ksivi gabi tumas carbon. It says it 2 times, that word, and by oil v'yored, v'nel mimenu v'hutami v'nel mimenu v'huyada. So kama davka l'migmar minei al helam tuma hu chayev inu chayev al helam mikdash v'idach kra yiserahu. So the extra pasuk is extra, and therefore it's talking about v'huyada bin trei v'nelam. It has to be that there was knowledge between the nelam. In other words, before and afterwards. That's how he reads it. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Fine. Rabbi Oimer enut sarich harihu Oimer v'nelam. So if it already says v'nelam, now that you forgot mechal shiyada, right? The v'huyada. So in other words, v'huyada hari kan shtei yediyos. In other words, if it says you forgot, you can't forget something unless you remembered it before. So therefore, he says the word v'nelam already is mashma that there was yediyah b'tchil anyway, and therefore The question is, so then why does it need to say it twice? So he learns out from there that that's the drasha, that because there's an extra time it says it, is to tell you that there's a din tuma of mikdash v'kodesh. Okay, so that's what we learn out from that sheet of the shita of Rabbi. Okay. So that whole long piece was actually just a quote from what we saw in yesterday's daf. Amramar, Venelam. So when it says Venelam Mechlal Shiyada, it's mashma you knew before, right? Because if you forgot, as we said, so you must be because you knew from before. So my mashma, how do you know that? So Amarava Medaluksiv Vihi Aluma Mimenu. And don't use the language that it was like forgotten from him. So therefore, because it doesn't use that language, rather just says Pashit, he forgot, must be that there was Yediyah B'tchila. Okay, so when it comes to the dinim of a saita, that was like not within the periphery of the husband. Whereas the husband didn't know what was going on with his wife exactly. Was she mizana tachtav sumachlal dehavi yadam ikara? Is it true that means that he knew, right, that she had tashmish? So it says that they'll be cleansed and the sin will be lifted up. Only the time when the husband is menukim avoin. In other words, that he didn't know that she was already mazana and he did not have relations with her. Only then will we say Amayin Boitkinas Ishto. Only then will it be Boidik. Ein Ish Menukim Avin, because he was with his wife after knowing that she was already had Tashmish, then Ein Amayin Boitkinas Ishto. So in that case, that can't be, right? So we see clearly when it comes to the dinim of Saita that the language of a nelam does not mean that he knew something before, because if he knew before, then there would be no din saita. The su gabi tayred except the nelma me'enai kol chai, that it was removed from the eyes of all people, of all living, and mi'ofa shemayim, and from the birds of the sky, nister is hidden. So machad deika dehavi yadabei. So the fact that we're saying that it was certain things that were hidden, that means that take. We knew. So Rashi over here, by the way, says, as I mentioned, Shibola Acher Shinistra. If he does have tashrish with her, then it's fine. The mayim can be boidik her, but dafka if he didn't know. But if he knew, then not. So how do we understand this second idea with the Torah? Well, you're saying that everything was known. The person doesn't know the ways of God. So we see the fact that it says Benelam does not necessarily mean that there's Yediyah before. Now, Rabbi Ksava Rebbe Yediyas Beis Rabbi Shema Yediyah, says Rashi. Shalamad bebeis Rabbi, that which was learned in his teacher's home, Shehanoigeya betuma, Tame. Someone who touches Tuma is Tame. V'hu Yada, Shehirgish, he knew when he felt Kishenaga Avoloi Hisboinin Lashum Alib Lasum Aliba Shenitma. So basically, Hitaka did know. It's just a double pashit that if a person comes in contact with Tuma, so then that's considered to be Yediyah. He already knew. Even you can say, well, he didn't comprehend it completely. No. The fact that you touched Tuma, you know that you touched Tuma. And therefore there was Yediyah B'tchila. Amr Apapal Abaya Elodek In Bo Yediyah B'tchila of Yeshma Yediyah B'sof Mi'ika Deleis B'Yediyah Dis Leis Yediyah Beis Rabbi. Understand, I thought you just said that basically any person is going to have Yediyah B'tchila. So how could you ever have a case of there's no Tchila, there's no Yediyah B'tchila? It's still possible. So Mishkachsla B'tinik Shenishba Ben Anachrim. If we're talking about someone who's just totally uneducated, a Tinik Shenishba, what it means he was captured among the Goyim, which means he was never given any education about the dinim of Tum and Tahara, so therefore him touching it means nothing. So therefore for him, that would be a case of there's no Tchila B'tchila. But normal situations, people that are educated, even though they didn't necessarily digest or comprehend exactly what they did, but they knew that they touched Tumah. And therefore, for that constitutes as Yediyah B'tchila. Okay, question 1. Bahava min amrina, the time of the Rabbi, the Amr Benela Mechalal Shiyada, Hainu Mamashmois, the look siv, Vihi Aluma Mimenu. Male Mikrois. So again, normally it's that says I forgot, must be he remembered from before. So we actually learn out that it must be Nela means even that you the loyada that you never knew before. So the question is, where do we see which sources or psukim demonstrate that? So question 1. First of all, we see this again from Gabi Saita, right? Because it says v'nelam me'ene isha, right? And again, it has to be that he never knew, because if he knew, if ein ish menukam avayin in a mind boiknes ishto, so therefore that can't be. And also we learn out by Torah, it says v'nelma me'ene kolchai v'leika diyada dechsev lo yada anish arka. So even though it says it was forgotten, it doesn't mean that people knew about it before, because this is not something which people ever were able to comprehend. Okay, let's continue. So the Gemara then quotes Yitzia Shabbos. So we talked about Yediyah Satoma, and now we're going to continue with Yitzia Shabbos. Shtaim Shein Arba. So Tanan Hasam, we learned over there in the beginning of Masechta Shabbos, Yitzia Shabbos Shtaim Shein Arba. Says that's what it says, Beferish. Okay, so what is that? So there was Arba. So there's Shtayim Shein Arba. So Bifnim Shtayim Shein Arba b'chutz. 2 which is for in the inside, 2 which is for in the outside. So this is referring to, of course, the din of Hotzah. So b'chutz means in, like a Rishus Harabim, and Bifnim is inside Rishus Hayachid. So that's what it's referring to. And the entire Mishnah elaborates on how this is possible. So says, let's look at Rashi. Dalad Bifnim, Shtayim L'chiyav Hachnasa, the ani v'hachnasa the malhabayas. So it could be there's a chiv when the poor person brings it in, right? Or the balbayas brings it in. Ubeiz liftar kishi ze oiker v'zemaniach. It's possible that if only one person did the akira and one did the hanacha, so then you're potter, because the pasuk says ba'asoisa ha'isas kula. It has to be dafki if you do the whole malacha, right? Only if you did the whole malacha, which is both the akira and the hanacha. However, we will be chayiv in the event where you did the ikr and the hanacha, you did both, from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim, or from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid. Okay. So Ma'ishna Halcha the Tanish Shtayim Shein Dalid, the Suloi. So why does our Mishnah kind of just stop there when in Shabbos it goes more elaborate? So it's Pashut. Hasam over there, Dikr Shabbos Tani Avos Toilus. Because over there, since it's getting into the dinim of Shabbos, because it's a whole Masechta, so it's allowed to elaborate a little bit more. It goes into the Avos, which is referring to the Yitzia, and the Toldos, which is Hachnasa, because the Avos are written explicitly in the Pasuk, as we see in Perek HaZorek. Hachnasa is learned out B'Sfara, that if you're chayiv by taking something from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim, so certainly you should also be chayiv the opposite way around. But that's actually a Tolda. So over there, it talks about Avos and talks about Toldas. Hachad alav ikar shamasu Avos tani v'Toldas lo tani. It only mentions Avos. So Avos ma'in ninhu. So what are Avos? Yitzias. So Yitzias tarti haven. There's 2, right? By taking it out. Because how is there 2? Because either the Baal Bias takes it from the Rishus Yachid, his private home, to Rishus Harabim, or the Ani sticks his hands inside the Rishus Yachid, takes it, and does an Akira, and he brings it into the Rishus Harabim, and puts it down to Hanacha. So that we find when it comes to Hachnasa, when it comes to Yitzia, there's 2. The Yitzias So my new Yitzias Tarti Haven. The Chitem Mehen L'chiv Mehen Liftor. So some are Chayiv, some are Potter. But Duma Demaris the Goyim Katani used to said before. Same as Saras. Mahasam Kula Chiyuva, Avhacha Kula Chiyuva. So as we said, it can't be talking about a case where the Baal Bias or the Ani did only half of the Malacha, because then you would be Potter. Because our Mishnah is talking about, just like Negoyim, that it's a Chiyav. And therefore, all of these cases you'd be Chayav. So how do we establish that? It must be that we're talking about two Hachnasas and two Yitzias. But that's Hachnasas is told us. So why does it elaborate more then? El Omer Papa Hasam, the Iker Shabbos, Tani, Chayuva, Paturi. Because over there, we're talking about the dinim of Shabbos, so therefore we mentioned when you're Chayav, when you're Potter. Hacha Chayuva, Tani, Paturi lo Tani. Our Mishnah doesn't mention the Paturs. Chayuva Maininhu, so what are the Chayuvs? Chayuvim. Yitziyos. Yitziyos Tartihu, Dehavin. Shtaim Dehoitza, Shtaim Dehachnasa. So there's two of Hachnasa and two Yitziyah. Now, Yitziyas Katani, but it says Yitziyas, which is actually the same question that we have over in Masechtas Shabbos. So Ravashi Tana Hachnasa Nami Hoitza Karile. The truth is that when you use the word Yitzios, it just depends on where you're leaving. Yitzios doesn't just mean going from your house to Rishus Harabim. It could be you're leaving the Rishus Harabim and going into the Rishus Hayachid. Even though the truth is, we consider that really as a Hachnasa. You're bringing it into a private area. But the truth is, it could also be called a Yitziyah. Hachnasa could be a Yitziyah because it's taken out of the Rishus Harabim. And therefore that counts. So Memai, how do we know this is certainly a good way of reading this? And this is exactly the same as Masechtas Shabbos. As we continue here in Beis, Dinan, Hamoitzim Rishus L'Rishus Chayiv. It says regarding the Avos Malachos, when you take something from one Rishus to the other, you're Chayiv. So Mil Askina Dikamayel Eluye Vikakari Lehoitza, right? That you took it up, and that's considered to be Hoitza. You took it out, right? So therefore, it's a proof. Maybe we're talking about it went from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Yachid, and we still call it a Hotzah. Now, V'dil become mapping Rishus Yachid Rishus Harabim. Maybe the case over there is why it says Hotzah is not because it's from a public to a private, but from a private to a public, and that makes sense that you're taking it out. So now, Imkein Nisni Hamayitzim Rishus Yachid Rishus Harabim. My Rishus. Why does it use that language? That's the film Rishus Harabim Rishus Yachid. It's referring to either way. And the key point is, and it's called Hoitza. So even though you're bringing it in, nonetheless, it's considered to be a form of Hoitza. And therefore, our Mishnah is actually talking about all the times you're Chayiv. We're talking about times in which you're Chayiv for taking it out to the Rishus Harabim, and sometimes you're Chayiv for bringing it in to the Rishus Hayachid. And therefore, it's consistent with the Goyim, which also is something in which which you're always Chayiv. Now, and what is the reason? So Tanakol Akiras Chayfetz Mimkaimoi Hatzar Karile. Because anytime we say there's an Akiras Chayfetz, when you're lifting something up and moving it, it's considered to be a form of Hotzah. And therefore, even into a Rishus Yachid, even into the Rishus Yachid is considered a Hotzah. We can also prove from our Mishnah that it says that there's two which is for inside and two and four which is for outside. And it talks about Hachnasa, so that's clearly a proof that even though it says the word Yitzias, the fact that it elaborates and talks about cases where you bring it from the Rishus Harabim into the Rishus Yachid, which is seemingly a Hachnasa, but nonetheless we can use the same language of Yitziyah. So he explains that we would actually use the language of its Rishuyos. It's just domains, and therefore it's interchangeable whether we're talking about a Rishus going from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Yachid, or Rishus Yachid to Rishus Harabim. So that's how we understand it. And Tosfos quotes the Rashi in Masechta Shabbos, Yitzios HaShabbos Shtaim. Kolomer Shtei Rishuyos. There's two Rishuyos, Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, V'al Yedem Yesh Lehen Daled Isurim. And through them, there's 4 Isurim, Bifnim, V'daled B'chutz. Okay, and that's basically quoting Rashi. All right, let's look at question 2. Yitzias HaShabbos Shtaim Shein Arba. Elohin HaShtayim Dechashiv Tana Didon. So, one shot is Haitzad the Ani, Haitzad the Baal Habayis the Avos Ninhu. So, we're talking about what are the two Dechashiv Hatana. So, one is Yitzias of the Ani, taking it out from Rishus Rabim, Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabim. Alternatively, we could be talking about the Baal Habayis, again, who takes it out. The same thing, they're both Hotzah. Or Shtei Rishuyos de Shabbos Kachashiv. The Hainu Rishus Yachid, Rishus Rabim, Leperish Rashi, Perikam de Shabbos. So alternatively, it could be referring to, again, from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabim and vice versa. Fine. So therefore, those are the two potential answers to that question. Okay. So it's either referring to the two forms of Hotzah, or we're talking about Hotzah and Hachnasa. Okay. So, and again, Rabbi Omer Rishuyos Katani Rishuyos Shabbos Shtayim. Okay. Weiter. Moros Negoyim Shtayim Shehin Arba. Also, when it comes to Saras, it's 2 which is 4. Tanan Hasam. Moros Negoyim, when it comes to, so look at Rashi, Shnayim, there's 2 which are Ksuvin, Seis, Ubaheres. And Sapachas, we saw this before, is Eno Shem Naga. That doesn't count. It's 4 because it comes to include the Toldos. Okay. So we have Seis and Baharis, and and another 2, which is their Toldos. Tanan Hasam. Moros Negoyim Shem Shen Arba, Beheres Aza Kisheleg. So we have this Beheres. So again, it's Seis and Beheres. So Beheres could be Aza Kishel. It could be like a very deep color of white, which is very, very white, which is like snow. And Shneila Katsid Hahechel. And the other one is also white. However, it more is like looks like this, the plaster, as Rashi says, the Afagav that Semer Lavan Aza Mitzid Al Karchas Seishu Av Karav El Livonisa Shel Baheres El Shigavo Mimenu Ma'at. It's a little bit higher. Mitel Sheinu Lavan Kamohu Yal Chol Davar Shachar Nira Gavoa Min Lavan. Okay. Anyway, so this is another form of Baheres. So that's Baheres. It's either like deep like snow, or it's like plaster. And Seis is Ketsemer Lavan. Seis is like this white wool. And Shneila Kikrum Beitza. It has the like the whiteness of an egg. Okay, so again, you have these are the basic 4 colors. Omer Rav Chanina Manta Namaris Negoyim Dolok Rabbi Akiva. So the one who learned the din of Negoyim of there's 4 is not like Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva the Mazulam al Mazu. He said that one is above the other, one's above the other. Im Kain Tiharis Sid Heichel Militzaref Bahad Militzaref Bahadi Man Litzrufi Bahadi Baheres. So the question is that if in fact you have again Baheres, which has these 2 colors of like snow and like tzid, and Seis, which is like wool and like an egg. So the truth is, he holds that each of these stages are like a deeper color. Now, since he holds that one is better than the other, or more white, in Kinti Heart that Tzid Heichel, he would actually purify, he would say that the Tzid Heichel is nothing. Motzarf Bahade Man, so let's rufe Bahadi Baheres. So what do? We connected Sid Hahechel to Baheres. So Ika Se'es, but how about there's Se'es, the Adivamine, which is even more Lissarufe, Bahadi Se'es. Lav toil the didehu. So Yihachi Krum Beitz Nami Bahadi Man Lissarufe. So basically, look at question 3. Elomars Medalid Maris Hadagoyim and Starfim Yimar Ketsemer Lavan. So which ones can actually link to the Tsemer Lavan, which is again Se'es? So either the Mara Kisheleg, which because Se'es Ketsemer Lavan is an Av, and Aza Kisheleg is an Av also. So those link together. And also Mara Kikrum Beitza, because Mara Kikrum Beitza is a Tolda of Se'es. So therefore, either an Av can be linked to another Av, or its Tolda can be linked to its Av. However, when it comes to Sid Heichel should not be able to be linked to Se'es, to Semer Lovin, because Sid Heichel is a Tolda of Baheres. So, however, that's how we should read it. But according to Rabbi Kiva, he would say it should also Marat Sid should also be linked. Why? And he explains it through logic. He says because if you think about it, since Sid Heichel is right, it's right next to Se'es Ketsemer Lavan, so it makes sense that it also should be connected to Tsemer Lavan. So again, Rabbi Kiva Kivandir Mezul Mal Mazu Mezul Mal Mazu in Cain Tiharta Tzid Heichel Mulitzarf Bahadi Mulitzarf. You should be able to connect the Tzid Heichel to Se'es Ketsemer Lavan. Bahadi Man Lisruf Bahadi Baheres. But what do? We connect it to Baheres to the Aza Kasheleg. But Ika Se'es. However, you can also connect it to Se'es, Diadifamine, Latsrufi Bahadi Se'es, Lav Tol Dididehu. But we say that since it's not, it's Tolda, right? Because it's a Tolda, rather it's a Tolda, it's a Tolda to Baheres. So therefore, that's why our Tana does not learn out from one to the other. So that's the basic idea. Let's look in Rashi. Let's look at this long Rashi first. Im Kain, actually. Dehu Shenosn Beloshan Avasul told us Tiharta Mara Hatsid. Again, the Mara Batsid is the question, which is the Shnia, which is Ketsid Hahechel. So that's the question. Says Rashi, Dematani Batsid Shnia Labaheres, that we said it's like secondary. Volotani Nami Shnia Se'es. It's considered to be a secondary or Tolda of Baheres and not of Se'es. The Hari Av Maseis Hipchusa, but Se'es is less. So Shema Mina Svirli Latana Delobas Mina that Se'esi. It's not considered to be a link to Se'es. V'lomatsterufi Bahada, and it cannot be combined to Se'es, because again it's connected to Baheres. Umedahashta Bahadi Man Nitzdarfa. Who can it be connected to? I Bahadi Baheres Aviha. If it's connected to Baheres, it's Av, which is true, the Av of Kasheleg. Ha'ika Se'es, She Ketsemer, Diadifamine Beluban. It's more white. Nimsas Baheres Lamal Minatzid. So it turns out the Baheres is more than the Tzid, Shtei Milos. Rabbi Kiva Zum Al Mazuboy. In other words, basically he holds that the Av of Se'es should actually is more pronounced than the Tolda of Baheres. Okay. Alright. Fine. So the Gemara says Ihachi Krum Beitzenami, which is the Tolda of Se'es, right? Nami Bahadi Man Listerufe. There's the very bottom one, Listerufe Bahadi Se'es. So we end up linking it to Se'es. So ikut sid, how about sid diadifamine l'sterufe, and maybe it should be connected to sid, which is another tolda. So bahadi sid lav bar minahu. So he said no, it's not. It's min because one is baharis and one is ace. So even though a tolda to a tolda may sound more logical, but because it's not a av, and each of them are toldos, so therefore you cannot learn one from the other. Vavam and alf. So haiman. Bishlama bulot sid heichel krum beitza lokash nafagav the krum beitza mitatoi. That's like the lower one, lower the seis. Rachmana oimer l'seis l'sapachas. Sapachas tfeil l'seis. So it says clearly that sapachas is tofel to seis. Afagav the menach the minei tuva doesn't make any difference. El sid heichel kasha el mechvortim asnisa no kerbi kiva. Okay. We're going to stop there. It was a little bit hard. I wasn't expecting that. So let's look at question 3A and B again. So Elu Morris, Medal Morris, Hanagoyim, Starfin, Yimara, Ketsemer Lavan. So Ketsemer Lavan, again, let's just get this down. Semer Lavan, Se'e Semer Lavan is considered to be an av, is an av. So what is linked to it? Certainly it's tolda, which is krum beitza. Certainly baharas, which is also an av. The question is, when it comes to tzid heichel, which is a tolda of a different min of baharas, is that mitzdarf? So according to our Mishnah, no. And Rabbi Kiva says that gam im kamar tzid is. Okay. Question 3b. Elu Maris Medal Maris Negoyim Mitzdarfim Imara Ketsid HaHechel. Now, Sid HaHechel, again, is the Tolda, right? This is a Tolda. This one is an Av. So which ones are Mitzdarf? So obviously, it's going to be Baharis Azah, right? Right, 1 second. Which one's connected to Sid HaHechel? So according to the Rabbanan, it's Mara Kisheleg, right? Which is the Baharis Azah, because one is an Av and one's its Tolda. So therefore, certainly, it's going to link to its Tolda, to its Av, which would be Azah Kisheleg. And Akiva holds Mara Ketsemer, because it's right next to each other, right? So therefore, it's going to be linked to the Av next to it. Okay, Adkan.